In the quiet, working-class neighborhood of Oak Cliff, Dallas, a boy named Stevie Ray Vaughan discovered the guitar before he'd even discovered himself.
And he never ever seemed to be lost. It just flowed out. He seemed to be an open channel. And it just flowed through him. He never ever seemed to kind of dry up.
Stevie Ray Vaughan played guitar like a man on fire. A white kid from Dallas, he felt a lifelong kinship with the blues.
When you listen to him play, you hear his personality. And he was really good at expressing himself.
Really cared deeply about him. He cared about me too. It was like, in one way, he took care of me, and in another way, I tried to take care of him.
He seamlessly melded the supernatural vibe of Jimi Hendrix, the intensity of Albert King, the best of British, Texas, and Chicago blues, and the class and sharpshooter precision of his older brother, Jimmy.
Born in the autumn of 1954, he was the second son of Jimmy Lee Vaughan, a rough-edged asbestos worker, and Martha, a secretary who held the family together through her husband's temper and drinking.
And like when you hear him playing a solo and they get really nasty and low down and it goes crazy and it's like tension, and you know, that's what we liked, and that's the way our home life was a lot of tension. We didn't ever know what our old man was going to do. You know, he would go off like a rocket.
To relax, Big Jim and Martha loved to dance to Western swing. It was the boys' first exposure to music. When Jimmy was 12, a family friend gave him his first guitar. Soon after, Stevie got one of his own, a plastic toy with only 3 strings.
The household was loud with tension and music in equal measure. Stevie's brother Jimmy already had a guitar, and the younger Vaughan would sneak into his room to play it whenever he could.
And then we started really trying to play, and I would put it down and leave and say, look, don't touch my guitar, or I'm gonna really get mad. And I would leave and he would play the guitar just as soon as I left.
He was just 7 when he first wrapped his small fingers around the fretboard, but within a few years he was copying solos from the radio by ear. He practiced until his fingertips bled, then carried on. His earliest inspirations came from the local Texas bands of the 60s. The Nightcaps, the Cobras, and the chess blues artists who filled the late-night airwaves. He once said, "I used to fall asleep with the guitar in my hands. I just couldn't put it down." While his schoolmates played sports, Vaughan studied the 3 kings of the blues, B.B., Albert, and Freddie. He devoured everything by Jimi Hendrix, Otis Rush, and Lonnie Mack, developing a hybrid style that was pure Texas, part thunder, part poetry. The shy boy from Oak Cliff found his voice through 6 strings. It was his refuge from the chaos at home, the one thing he could control. He began performing at local talent shows, his playing already fierce and confident. By 17, he had decided there was no other path. He left high school, packed his guitar, and set his sights on Austin, the beating heart of Texas music. Austin in the early 70s was a musician's paradise. Sweaty bars, long nights, and a sense that anything could happen to someone who could play. Vaughan arrived broke, hungry, and determined. He joined a revolving door of local bands, Crackerjack, the Nightcrawlers, and Paul Ray and the Cobras, learning how to lead an audience as much as a band. He spent endless hours at Antone's, the legendary blues club where the Old Masters, Muddy Waters, Albert King, Hubert Sumlin still performed. They saw this scrawny Texan with a Stratocaster and recognized something rare. Muddy once told him, "Boy, you keep playing like that and they'll remember your name." He listened. He absorbed. He learned stagecraft from the veterans, tone from the greats, and humility from the music itself. The blues wasn't nostalgia for him, it was living truth. By the late 70s, he had formed his own group, Triple Threat Review, with singer Lou Ann Barton and bassist W.C. Clark. When the lineup changed, the name did too, Double Trouble. Taken from an Otis Rush song with drummer Chris Layton and later bassist Tommy Shannon, the trio found a chemistry that crackled like electricity.
The good times didn't last long. First, W.C. Clark left, and Stevie renamed the band Double Trouble.
Austin audiences knew, word spread. Every club night was a revelation. raw, loud and joyful. He played his battered Strat, nicknamed Number One, through battered amplifiers, pushing them to the point of collapse. It was a sound both feral and lyrical, as if the instrument itself were shouting. But success was still a dream. For years, Vaughan lived gig to gig, hustling for petrol money and sleeping in vans. "We were broke," he recalled, "but the music kept us alive."
In 1982, Double Trouble played the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland, the first unsigned band to perform there.
In the summer of 1982, Stevie Ray Vaughan boarded a plane to Switzerland to play the Montreux Jazz Festival. For a Texas bar band, it was an unimaginable invitation. He walked on stage to polite curiosity and left it to boos and applause in equal measure.
Double Trouble's raucous sound shocked the staid European crowd. For a while, the show seemed headed for disaster.
And we get out there and we start playing and a few people start booing and stuff, and that sounds like hundreds. So we're like, nobody likes us.
His set was ferocious, unapologetically loud. Jazz purists were scandalized, blues lovers were stunned.
She my sweet little baby, I'm a little boy.
Among those in the audience, though, were David Bowie and Jackson Browne. They saw not a bar band guitarist, but a phenomenon.
I saw him working in a jazz concert in Europe, and he was like second on the bill or something, and this little kid from Austin, Texas, came out and just played some of the most devastating city rhythm and blues I've heard in years.
Bowie, deep into recording his album Let's Dance, invited Vaughan to play lead guitar on several tracks. The results were explosive. On songs like Let's Dance and China Girl, Vaughan's blues phrasing cut through the slick pop production, giving Bowie a new edge. "He played with so much heart," Bowie later said. "It reminded me why guitars mattered." Jackson Browne went further. He offered Vaughan free use of his Los Angeles studio. Within days, Double Trouble recorded a blistering demo that captured the essence of their live sound. Legendary producer John Hammond Sr., the man who had discovered Dylan and Springsteen, heard the tapes and immediately signed them to Epic Records. Bowie asked Vaughan to join his world tour. Stevie declined. "I've got my own thing to do," he said. It was a gamble, but it would soon pay off. In the spring of 1983, Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble released their debut album, Texas Flood. Recorded in a matter of days, mostly live, it was raw and unfiltered. The sound of three musicians locked in perfect rhythm.
We did it in 2 days, And,
2 days?
Well, we did all the tracks in 2 days, did 8 songs one day and 2 the other. Did the vocals in 2 days, mixed it in 2 days, mastered it in 2 days.
Tracks like Pride and Joy and Love Struck Baby jumped from the radio with the swagger of a man who had paid his dues. The slow blues title track was devastating. Just voice, guitar and emotion. Critics compared him to Hendrix, Albert King, even Clapton. Vaughan brushed it off. "I ain't trying to play like anybody," he said. "I'm just playing what I feel." Texas Flood went platinum. Suddenly, the man who had played for Tips in Austin was headlining major venues and appearing on national television. His live performances were transcendent. Sweat pouring, eyes closed, guitar screaming. He'd play behind his back with his teeth or flat on his knees, but it never felt like showmanship. It felt like possession. As his drummer Chris Layton put it, "When Stevie hit that first note, you knew he wasn't from this planet." The follow-up, Couldn't Stand the Weather, arrived just a year later and confirmed Vaughan's ascent. It was both tighter and bolder. His instrumental Scuttle Button was a furious burst of speed. Tin Pan Alley, a slow, aching blues recorded in one take. But it was his version of Jimi Hendrix's Voodoo Child that silenced any doubts about who carried the torch. Where others mimicked Hendrix, Vaughan channeled him. He turned homage into resurrection. The album went platinum, and Stevie began to tour relentlessly. Fame, however, brought its own weather. On stage, he was a force of nature. Off stage, he was unravelling. Cocaine and whiskey became part of his daily routine. The very energy that fueled his playing was destroying him from within. His marriage to Lenora "Lenny" Bailey, the woman who had given him his cherished Lenny guitar, began to crumble. Yet even in the haze, the music never stopped. In October 1984, Vaughan headlined Carnegie Hall, bringing his brother Jimmy, Dr. John, and a horn section. For a blues guitarist from Texas, it was the ultimate validation. "Man, I walked on that stage and thought, this is it," he said later. But he also confessed, "I was killing myself and didn't even know it."
There were mounds of cocaine laying on top of the organ. Mounds, huge. It was very scary to watch. Where I was doing a lot, Stevie was doing 5 times, 10 times more than I was doing.
By 1985, Vaughan's third album, Soul to Soul, marked both his ambition and his decline. He expanded Double Trouble with keyboardist Reese Winans, enriching the sound but adding pressure. Songs like Say What and Life Without You revealed flashes of introspection beneath the bravado. Yet sessions were chaotic. Vaughan would arrive at the studio exhausted, sometimes too high to play. His friend Bonnie Raitt recalled, "He was beautiful, but he was burning out. You could see the pain behind the grin."
But with fame and fortune came excess. Stevie Ray's performance contract required a fifth of scotch in his dressing room each night. His cocaine habit rose to 4 grams a day. To cure hangovers, he liked to dissolve some of the coke into a glass of whiskey for a morning pick-me-up.
The critics noticed too, the album was solid but lacked the unfiltered power of his earlier work. Still on stage, Vaughan was unstoppable. He played hundreds of shows a year, each one leaving the crowd in awe and himself closer to collapse. In 1986, during a European tour, it all came apart. In a hotel room in Germany, Vaughan collapsed, his body ravaged by years of substance abuse. Doctors told him his system was shutting down. He was 29 and, as one put it, a day away from death. Stevie later admitted, "I'd been playing Russian roulette with myself, I just ran out of chambers." What followed was the hardest journey of all. Vaughan checked into rehab in Atlanta and faced his demons. The process was brutal but transformative. "I had to learn to live again," he said. "I'd been hiding behind a bottle for 10 years. His bandmates stood by him, uncertain but hopeful. When he emerged clean and sober, he was almost unrecognizable, leaner, calmer, and grateful to be alive.
Before I sobered up, I was to the point where I thought that I would go ahead and stay high as I could get until I died, and that'd be pretty soon, and that was okay.
Yeah.
That's where I was at. Because I didn't know how to, I knew that I couldn't keep going, and I knew that I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
And that's a hell of a place to be.
Sobriety didn't dull his edge, it sharpened it. "Now I can hear every note," he told one interviewer. "It's like the fog lifted." His comeback album, In Step, recorded in 1989, was the sound of redemption. The title referred to being in step with life and the 12-step program that saved him. Songs like Tightrope and Wall of Denial laid his struggles bare, confessional, unflinching, and joyous.
Basically, I got to start off thanking God that I'm alive and well enough to be with you today. And that all is as well as it is.
There's something so strong, good people wash away by tears.
The album won a Grammy and went platinum, but more importantly, it proved that Stevie Ray Vaughan had reclaimed his soul. His peers were stunned by his transformation. Eric Clapton, who had himself overcome addiction, said, "Stevie had found peace. He was playing better than ever, and he was happy." Vaughan toured tirelessly, not as a man chasing fame, but as one celebrating survival. Fans noticed the difference. On stage, he smiled more, joked, and radiated gratitude. He would often tell audiences, "Every day I wake up sober is a good day." For all his success, Stevie never forgot where he came from, or who had first inspired him. Throughout their lives, he and Jimmy Vaughan shared a bond that was part sibling rivalry, part brotherly devotion. They'd grown up copying each other's licks, each pushing the other to play better. "He was my teacher," Stevie said of Jimmy. "He'll always be the best guitar player in the family." In 1990, the brothers finally recorded together, fulfilling a lifelong dream. The album, titled Family Style, was a joyous collaboration, playful, funky, full of affection. Tracks like TikTok carried a message of optimism. Time's slipping away, don't let it slip away. Neither could have known how prophetic those words would be. "We'd both come through the fire," Jimmy later said. "We were just getting to enjoy life again." On the evening of the 26th of August, 1990, the air at Alpine Valley Music Theatre in Wisconsin was electric. The bill was a blues lover's dream. Eric Clapton, Buddy Guy, Robert Cray, Jimmy Vaughan, and of course his younger brother Stevie. Backstage, the mood was jubilant. Stevie was radiant, clean, confident, and playing like a man reborn. The finale was an all-star jam of Sweet Home Chicago, with all the guitarists trading solos in pure joy. As the crowd roared, Vaughan hugged his brother and said, "I love you, Jimmy." Moments later, in the early hours of the 27th, Stevie boarded a helicopter bound for Chicago. Heavy fog hung over the valley. Minutes after takeoff, the helicopter crashed into a hillside. Everyone on board, Vaughan, the pilot, and 3 members of Clapton's crew were killed instantly. Stevie Ray Vaughan was 35 years old.
Grammy-winning blues guitarist Stevie Ray Vaughan is dead following the accident. Vaughan played in a concert last night with rock star Eric Clapton, and today both were to fly to Chicago with Clapton's band. Clapton was not in the same chopper with Vaughan, but 3 members of his band were. All 3 were also killed, as was the chopper pilot. The copter crashed in East Troy, Wisconsin, near Milwaukee, less than a mile from where it took off.
At 5 o'clock this morning, the Jet Ranger helicopter was reported missing. 2 hours later, the wreckage was found. So were 5 bodies.
The news rippled through the music world like a shockwave. Eric Clapton said, "It was like losing a member of my family."
There's no way this is true. This couldn't happen. And I ran from the room. I called security and had them meet me at his room, Stevie's room. And I said, "You gotta let me into this room." And they let me in, and when they opened the door, I looked in and there was the bed, it was turned down, little candy on the pillow, and I was just like, I guess it's just something I'll never get over that. I'll get better about it, but I'll never get over it.
Thousands gathered in Dallas for the funeral. Bonnie Raitt, Jackson Browne, Stevie Wonder, and Buddy Guy were among the mourners. Vaughan was laid to rest in Laurel Land Memorial Park. His beloved #1 Stratocaster placed nearby. Texas had lost its favorite son.
I think they'll put a monument somewhere here in Austin for him.
I told people, don't be afraid to reach out and get help. Don't wait till it's too late. And I think that's one reason I liked him, because he was telling people to reach out. And you shouldn't take life for granted, because you may not have a second chance. And he was right.
In the song TikTok, he sings the refrain, "Remember." And what Stevie was trying to tell me, and I guess all of us, he was trying to tell me, Niall, remember my music.
In the months that followed, grief gave way to reflection. Vaughan's final sessions with his brother were released as Family Style, reaching the top of the charts. The following year, the posthumous collection The Sky is Crying revealed a treasure trove of unreleased gems, including his haunting version of Little Wing. That track won a Grammy for Best Rock Instrumental and seemed to summarize everything about Vaughan: beauty, fire, and soul. Fans and fellow musicians struggled to comprehend the loss. B.B. King said, "He was one of the most important guitarists of any generation." Carlos Santana called him a channel for pure emotion. In Austin, the city erected a bronze statue by the lakefront. Stevie in his wide-brimmed hat, guitar in hand, gazing toward the skyline.
Welcome to the Austin Music Commission's dedication of the Stevie Ray Vaughan Memorial.
It's really hard to be happy and celebrate his life and not be sad about him being gone.
The plaque reads simply, Stevie Ray Vaughan, 1954 to 1990, music lives on.
And he never ever seemed to be lost. It just flowed out. He seemed to be an open channel. And it just flowed through him. He never ever seemed to kind of dry up.
To understand Stevie Ray Vaughan's legacy, you have to understand his sound. He played with brute force and delicate control. In the same breath, his guitars were strung with heavy gauge strings, tuned down a half step to achieve that fat, growling tone. He struck the strings so hard that he often tore the calluses from his fingers, patching them with superglue before the next show. His amp rig was a Frankenstein's monster of vintage Fenders, Dumbles and vibroverbs, each pushed to the edge of distortion. Yet it wasn't the equipment that made the magic, it was his touch. He once said, "Tone comes from your heart. If you ain't got it in there, you ain't gonna get it out of there." Listen to Pride and Joy, and you hear swagger. Listen to Lenny or Riviera Paradise, and you hear tenderness. He could make a single note sing longer and truer than most players could make 100. Guitarists still dissect his phrasing, the rakes, the slides, the glissando runs. But what made him unique was the emotional honesty behind it all. Technically, he was astonishing. Spiritually, he was transcendent. He bridged the gap between blues and rock, old and new, sacred and profane. His influence shaped not only a generation of blues players, but mainstream artists who rediscovered the power of the guitar because of him. Musicians like John Mayer, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, and Gary Clark Jr. all cite Vaughan as their North Star. As Shepherd once said, he made the blues young again. For all the heroics of his playing, perhaps the most enduring part of Stevie Ray Vaughan's story is his redemption. He stared down addiction, reclaimed his life, and turned pain into triumph. "I used to think the blues was about being sad," he once told a crowd. "But the blues is about getting out of being sad." In the years after his death, that message resonated with fans who found hope in his music. His recovery gave his later songs a spiritual dimension: Tightrope, Wall of Denial, Life Without You, each one a testament to perseverance. He left behind just 4 studio albums released in his lifetime, yet his posthumous releases continued to chart for decades. The compilation Greatest Hits went multi-platinum. The essential Stevie Ray Vaughan introduced new listeners in the digital age. In 2000, he was inducted into the Blues Hall of Fame. In 2015, John Mayer inducted him and Double Trouble into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, calling him the ultimate guitar hero who taught us all that feel is everything.
Stevie was the ultimate guitar hero, and heroes live forever. On behalf of every guitar player and every blues lover, it is the honor of a lifetime to induct Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Texas continues to honor him every year on Stevie Ray Vaughan Day. Pilgrims visit his statue in Austin, leaving guitar picks, flowers, and handwritten notes. The metal has turned green from weather, but the love never fades. Across the world, young players still plug in their first Stratocaster and try to bend a string like Stevie did, chasing that impossible tone, chasing that feeling. Stevie Ray Vaughan's life was short, but his music endures with a kind of permanence that time cannot dull. He was the embodiment of the American blues tradition, forged in hardship, redeemed by art. Yet he was also a universal story. A man who fell, got up, and found salvation through creativity. His journey from Oak Cliff to Alpine Valley traces not just a musician's rise and fall, but the eternal human struggle between chaos and grace. At his best, Vaughan channeled something bigger than himself. In his hands, the guitar became both weapon and prayer. When he played Lenny in those final years, eyes closed, smiling faintly, it was as though he'd made peace with the universe, Eric Clapton said. When Stevie played, you could hear the joy of someone who had been given a second chance. That joy still vibrates. Eric Clapton has also had his troubles, both on and off stage. To hear more about them, click the thumbnail on screen.